Britain is finally getting some nuclear energy. Finally. I mean, this, in the face of the ideological net zero climate nonsense, as you can see here from only a couple of days ago, from the Right Honourable Ed Miliband and his Department for Energy Security, the government is launching an expanded net zero council. And it's just pure fanaticism from Miliband. I mean, look at the graphics, right? They tell you everything you need to know. We're going to have wind turbines and we're going to have solar energy. It's like, oh, are we? Oh, well, it's reindustrializing Britain. What, wind turbines? Solar panels? That's not going to work, is it? Idiot. And it's just like his entire Twitter feed is just this kind of woke net zero nonsense, right? And so it's like, right, I'm glad that this guy's in charge of our energy needs in the future. Here's their path, their plan.
He's green pilled, I suppose.
Oh my God, he's. So, quick aside, right? Green energy, when they say green energy, and they say, oh, we need wind turbines, we need solar panels, what they're saying is we want communism, right? That's what they're asking for. Because what they're saying is anything that would be productive and actually help our society grow and flourish, we are going to marginalize and put in the that's evil camp, and we're going to take everything that is actually fundamentally quite unproductive and try and force it on you and try and get you to accept a lower standard of living. And so, I mean, they're actually saying this. We are accepting the government's central role in steering the creation of this new energy system, setting expectations for the 2030 capacities of key technologies at national and regional level. We have high ambition. That means 43 to 50 gigawatts of offshore wind. Why? 27 to 29 gigawatts of onshore wind. Oh, brilliant. That's going to look amazing. Thank you so much. And 45 to 47 gigawatts of solar power. We're in England. What are you thinking? You are, and I'm going to go through this exactly the numbers as well, because this is crazy, right? And so they're doing this to significantly reduce our fossil fuel dependency, because Ed Miliband is going to save the world from total destruction in a cataclysmic firestorm of global warming. It's Ed Miliband. He's going to be the guy. So you're not the guy, Ed. You're a moron, right? And so they're going to spend $40 billion on average per year between 2025 and 2030, because we're just so flush for cash at the moment, you see. Money falling out of our pockets. And so why not just say, oh, there's a 20 billion black hole? Yeah, so that's why we're going to spend 40 billion on this alone a year for the next 5 years. And so, I mean, why would we even glance at solar power? Why would we? This is the number of annual sunshine hours a year. Obviously annual, because this is that Britain gets. I can't help but notice that Russia gets more sunshine hours than we do. It is sunnier in Russia than it is in England. Why would you ever mention solar power in this country? And the answer is, of course, because you're ideologically captured, right? Because someone in California, as you can see, lots of sunshine hours in California, someone in California was like, hey, it's going to be a very progressive thing to have solar power, and that will be very good for the environment, and it will be progressive and friendly and blah, 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 blah. And so Ed Miliband, who's obviously been programmed by Twitter, has gone, yeah, good point. We'll do the same. Not thinking about how ideologies are only relevant in the time and place where they emerge, because they are actually concretely attached to the circumstances, the physical circumstances of the people who come up with them. And so if you're in Britain and someone says solar power, you know you are speaking to a retard, to someone who has no brains and doesn't know what they're talking about. Because, I mean, it's not even close. It's just not even close. This is from the American Energy Department's thing, and they've just got a nice little graph here. So what's the most productive form of energy? Oh, it turns out that it's nuclear by a mile. It's 4 times more productive than solar. It's 3 times more productive than wind. Because believe it or not, at some points, the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow. But at all times, the nuclear turbine is constantly producing energy and producing steam to run a turbine. It's all heated water, okay? Everything, all energy production is just heated water. But the point being, it's just not, there's no discussion to be had. It's completely unscientific to say, oh, we need solar and wind. No, you're an ideologue. You are someone who has been programmed via Twitter with a Californian ideology that is fundamentally anti-human. Because the real reason they don't go for nuclear, and this has been a long contention that I've had, is that nuclear power would mean that the concerns about radical restructuring of our society all go away. There's no revolution in nuclear power. How can they tear down capitalism with nuclear power? Nuclear power is going to keep capitalism going until the sun burns out. I think that's really their problem. Any thoughts at this junction before I continue ranting and raving?
I think nuclear power is the way. That's no contest. And the only danger is that someone will be a DI higher inside it. That's the only issue I have with nuclear power.
And that's entirely our own fault if that happens.
Yeah, it's not exactly that it hasn't happened widely.
I mean, your point about capitalism is interesting because, of course, France is arguably more left-wing than we are, though, and they've managed to actually ensure that they are the most energy independent nation in Europe. And, you know, I think there are 56 nuclear reactors in France. There are only 9 in Great Britain. And just as we invented the railways, we are home to the world's first nuclear power station, Cardwell Hall, was it, or whatever it was called. And it just shows you how we've lost that ambition. We've lost all of that. I often used to say, you know, when did the Greeks stop being Greek? And now we can say, when did the British stop being British? That great industrious nation. And you just have to look at the short-termism here also, because it was over a decade ago that Nick Clegg famously said, we're not going to build any nuclear power plants.
It'll take 10 years.
It'll take 10 years. Well, that would have avoided the entire energy spike that we've seen. And that just goes to show you the thinking that actually is in the minds of our leaders.
The irony, again, I intended to be here 10 years later. I was here 10 years later, Nick, you know. And you know what? And even if it wasn't for me, even if I somehow died, I'd like my children and future generations to have it too. Like, again, it's not even a conversation that needs to be had. The fact that we have ever entertained the solar and wind lobbies is just preposterous. And so the only thing they have to fall back on is, well, it sounds scary.
Well, the craziest one of all was Angela Merkel, you'll remember, in 2016, after the Fukushima tsunami. Yep. She said, well, because of the tsunami, we're going to close down everything that remains in Germany, which is well known for its plague of tsunamis that descend on it every summer.
Constant problem with Germany. But then they had to go back to coal power plants, which were become dependent on Russia, which both worked out just perfectly, both from an environmental perspective. If you're really concerned about the global warming of the earth, well, you've gone back to your coal power plants and you've made yourself dependent on Russia, who now you allowed to essentially cripple you when they invaded Ukraine. So brilliant. And do you remember Trump getting laughed at as well?
Yeah,
they laughed in his face when he said, why are you making yourselves energy dependent on Russia? Stupid Trump. Yeah, who gets the last laugh? Anyway, so let's talk about safety then, because the last and most, honestly, the weakest argument that they come to is, well, it's not safe. It's not safe. No, actually, it is. It is the nearly the most safe. So every death from accidents and pollution that have come from, say, coal is 24 deaths per 150,000 people. With nuclear energy, it's 0.03 deaths, and with solar, it's 0.02 deaths. So not exactly dangerous. And as you can see, nuclear energy produces less greenhouse gas emissions. So look, there's just no argument. Anyone who mentions solar or wind are just wrong on everything. They've got no argument, and they're trying to fearmonger you, and there's just no reason not to do this.
How does one die from solar power? Is it one of the panels hits you on the head?
Manufacturing, I assume, or something like that, yeah. But again, it's one of those persistent things that essentially nuclear power deniers have been saying. And so the question is, well, do we have a good example of a country that actually decided to take up the nuclear baton? And as Rafe has already foreshadowed, yes, it's France. France is doing amazingly with nuclear power, and it's genuinely... I'm kind of annoyed they're mogging us on this, right? They get to lord it over us and say, no, you stupid Anglos are doing the stupid German thing, and we, the brilliant and incredibly lazy French, get to indulge our laziness because of our cheap energy generation. No, I'm pro-nuclear for xenophobic reasons, okay? We need to get one over the French. Like, France gets 70% of its energy from nuclear energy, right? Because they've had this long-standing thing. And in 2014, when the sort of green wave was coming, France got it too, and they planned to reduce it to only 50%. And that got scrapped because everyone's like, okay, that's obviously stupid. Why are we doing that? And that worked out really, really well for them. And so they are a net exporter of electricity at this point. And they export their energy. They make 3 billion euros a year exporting their energy because their energy costs are so abundant and their energy costs so low that they can sell it to the Germans, who are so stupid and block-headed about this subject They have arrived at the point where they're now dependent on the French rather than the Russians. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? No one needs to be energy dependent on anyone, actually, at this point.
And whilst France was building some of its new power stations, remember Gordon Brown was closing down our gas storage facilities as well, making our energy security even worse.
It's pure left-wing ideology that is against nuclear power, right? From a normal person's perspective, from a scientific perspective, it is only nuclear that is the only game in town, right? And if you think, okay, where are we going to get the uranium? Australia, actually. Australia has, I think, something like the second or third largest reserves of uranium. So, and Canada does as well. It's got massive reserves. So we don't need to rely on Russia for this. We're completely dependent on other Anglosphere countries, nations we can be guaranteed that are going to have a safe and prosperous and welcoming relationship with us. We will enrich them. They will enrich us. We all prosper. Foreign powers who hate us fail, and everyone wins. Like, literally everyone wins. There's no argument against this. I'm sick of hearing it. And so, as you said, Britain only has 9 nuclear power stations. France has, 56. And they're building a bunch more, or they were building 6 more, just because why not? If they're making you money, why not? You know, again, like, it's actually a growth industry for the French, and they've got the most advanced technology, things like that. And what this does is produce only 15% of our energy production, which is 6.5 gigawatts. So for some reason, we're going to spend $40 billion a year producing ineffective, inefficient, like unreliable solar and wind, or we could spend only, and in fact, spoiler alert, to build new power plants would cost between $2 and $3 billion. So we could literally build 20 new nuclear power plants a year for the money they're going to spend.
It's important to note that the new small nuclear reactors are much less expensive, much larger.
Indeed.
So they're much easier to create and build.
Yep. The Rolls-Royce modular nuclear reactors, again, innovation taking place in Britain. For some reason, this wasn't all over the news and the governments weren't all banging the drum on this. Each one costs between 2 to 3 billion to make. We're going to spend 40 billion a year on it anyway. Why not spend 40 billion a year on this? The only objection I have is the shape of the building that they're proposing. Gothic, please. Let's have it in Gothic style. But yeah, this is a completely feasible thing to do. There's absolutely no reason to do it, not to do it. And finally, absolutely finally, Keir Starmer has been forced essentially to come out and go, yeah, look, things in Britain are so bad, even the Labour government are like, yeah, we're gonna start building some nuclear energy. We hate to do it because that means that the revolution isn't coming. Obviously, Keir Starmer, lifelong leftist, doesn't want this to happen, but he has to make it happen. One thing that I find quite interesting as well, this became a bit mimetic, so I don't know whether you can see here, but these 2 cans represent all of the waste that all of the nuclear reactors in Britain have ever produced.
Gosh.
So, not much.
Really? That's amazing.
And a lot of people like, yeah.
Most of the waste standing either side of the cans.
Yes, as opposed to those 2. And a lot of people like, do I drink the forbidden can? Probably not. It will literally rot your jaw off. But yeah, so anyway, oddly tempted to know what it tastes like. Can't be good. Can't be good. But anyway, yeah. So as we found out recently, Keir Starmer has actually finally capitulated on this. He's like, yeah, okay, we'll build nuclear. If people have to live in Britain, then we will do it. Basically, they're going to remove regulations and any objections that people have legally.
And again, it's more reason to loathe the Tories, because they were in power for 14 years. They had, Tories are notoriously NIMBYist, always thinking about it. We can't have any power stations here or there. We've got the world's most expensive electricity, or Europe's most expensive electricity. Clear plan here. We're giving 18 billion to the Chagos Islands. How many of these SMRs could we build with that?
Well, literally 9 of them. We actually have the numbers. We could, and I forgot to bring it up for this, but in 2022, I think it was, the Tories commissioned a study to find out, well, how many would we have to build? And it turns out we would have to build 6 full-size nuclear reactors to power every home in the country. Right? And that would cost about 45 billion, something like that. It's like, okay, but that would be worth it. Like, if they were like, okay, no, we're going to build just, one in each region of the country, then essentially, I mean, you could one of the Labour votes saying, look, these are going to be government owned, so they'll be taxpayer funded, and that means you'll never pay an energy bill again in your life. Right? I mean, imagine that would be incredible. Could have done it. They could have done anything, And it's left to Keir Starmer essentially being forced into this position because of how bad things are getting in this country to say, okay, yeah, look, we're going to have to go nuclear because loony bloody Ed's plan on solar and wind, that's not going to last. So we're going to have to do something else. Otherwise, we're all going to go hungry and cold. So yeah, basically, finally, some positive news in Britain, right? Actually, we might not be impoverished just paying for the heating bill during the winter. My God.
How long does it take to build one of these?
Not that long either, actually. I don't think I have it to hand, but not that long. So it could be within a couple of years that we actually see dividends being paid on this. Who knows? God only knows. Let's please, because these aren't going to be the full-size ones that the Conservatives, when they were like, oh, it'll take 10 years. Yeah, the Rolls-Royce's modular nuclear ones are basically, I think, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's not 10 years. So it could be within a few years we actually get some bonuses and benefits and something good happens in Britain for once, even under a Labour government.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.